Welcome to Greater Good Radio Hawaii, where leaders inspire leaders. Greater Good Radio Hawaii is dedicated to social entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Evan Leong, and with me is my co-host, Carrie Leong.
Thank you, Evan. Today's guest is Dr. Kent Keith, bestselling author of the Paradoxical Commandments. Anyway, Mr. Keith was the first Hawaii Public High School graduate to become a Rhodes Scholar and the former president of Chaminade University. Please welcome to Greater Good Radio, Kent Keith. Welcome to our show.
Good to be with you.
So you wrote the book, The Paradoxical Commandment. Could you share with us a story about when you wrote that and how you wrote that?
Sure. Well, actually, I wrote the Paradoxical Commandments themselves. There are 10 of them. They're 149 words. I wrote them as part of a booklet for student leaders back in 1968, long time ago. And that was an interesting period, the 60s, a lot of conflict and confrontation, but also a lot of hope and a lot of idealism. And I was working with student leaders, and they were asking me, well, how should we lead? Why should we lead? And I wanted them to focus on doing what was meaningful, what would give them meaning and satisfaction, whether anyone appreciated them or not, or whether the change they wanted to achieve occurred right away or not. And so that's why I wrote the Paradoxical Commandments. And each one begins with a statement of adversity, things that are difficult in life, and each one's followed by a positive commandment. For example, the first one is people are illogical, unreasonable, and self-centered. Love them anyway. So the idea was no matter what the world does to you, you need to do what's right and good and true, and that'll give you meaning. And if you have the meaning, you don't have to have the glory.
So maybe you could share with us all of them.
Okay, sure.
Right?
I'd be happy to. People are illogical, unreasonable, and self-centered. Love them anyway. If you do good, people will accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Do good anyway. If you're successful, you'll win false friends and true enemies. Succeed anyway. The good you do today will be forgotten tomorrow. Do good anyway. Honesty and frankness make you vulnerable. Be honest and frank anyway. The biggest men and women with the biggest ideas can be shot down by the smallest men and women with the smallest minds. Think big anyway. People favor underdogs but follow only top dogs. Fight for a few underdogs anyway. What you spend years building may be destroyed overnight. Build anyway. People really need help but may attack you if you do help them. Help people anyway. And finally, give the world the best you have and you'll get kicked in the teeth. Give the world the best you have anyway.
How did you get inspired to come up with these commandments?
Well, I think the basic ideas I learned from my parents and my church. And it was stimulated by, again, the 60s and the conflicts that were going on and seeing young people go out in the world to bring about change and see them coming back much too early, discouraged or embittered because the change they wanted didn't occur. And I wanted to focus them on just doing what you thought was right and good and true and getting the meaning and not worrying about everything else, just moving forward.
So what do you mean by student leaders? Are these student political leaders or...
Actually, Evan, at that time, I was working mostly with high school student council leaders all over the country in about 8 different states. And I got a little bit involved with college leaders as well.
So you were a college student working with high school student
Yeah, that's right.
government leadership.
I got involved in student government when I was at Stevenson Intermediate and Roosevelt High School here in Honolulu. And I founded a leadership institute my senior year in high school for students here in Hawaii. And then I went on and continued working in that field on a national basis during my college years.
So what kind of impact have these paradoxical commandments had?
Well, it's hard to judge, but our best estimate is they've spread we know they've spread all over the world, and our best estimate is they've been used by millions of people. We can track them on the internet. We see them being used in many different countries by people of all different backgrounds, business people, government officials, military commanders, teachers, university presidents, social workers, parents, athletic coaches. A huge array of people of different backgrounds, different cultures, and different countries.
So you have 3 books now, is that correct?
That's right. The books I wrote for students back in the 60s were addressing those particular issues. And in 1997, I found out that Mother Theresa had put the Paradoxical Commandments up on her wall. And that was a really big discovery for me. And that's when I started speaking and writing about the commandments again. My first book was called Anyway, the Paradoxical Commandments. That did become a national bestseller and was translated into 16 languages. The next book was called Do It Anyway, the Handbook for Finding Personal Meaning and Deep Happiness in a Crazy World. And most recently, a religious book, Jesus Did It Anyway, the Paradoxical Commandments for Christians.
So what's the progression between these 3 books? Do they have a lot of similar themes or kind of different?
Well, all three of them are about the Paradoxical Commandments. The first one was an introduction that gave an overview and stories of things that happened to me when I was young that would help explain why certain commandments were what they were. The second was meant to be more about how to use the commandments, how to live them in your daily life. And so there were questions for reflection and discussion and a whole lot of stories of people that I know who lived the Paradoxical Commandments. I began getting a lot of mail from Christians who said, I know this is how Jesus wants me to live. Can you tie the commandments to the Bible? So that was really the reason for writing the third book. All of the illustrations and explanations are from the Old and New Testaments.
And you said that you did go to church and that helped you inspire you to write, your commandments. But at the same time, when you were writing your third book, did you have to go through the Bible to find...
Oh, absolutely. Because when I wrote the original 10 Paradoxical Commandments, I didn't do a Bible research project first and then write them. I just thought of, 10 different things that can be difficult in life and why that shouldn't stop you from doing the right thing anyway. So when it came to writing the religious book, it was really a lot of fun going into the Bible, looking for stories that would really be good illustrations of the individual commandments. And they're there. It was really a joy to track them down and to write them.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for more on Greater Good Radio.